Hey everybody, I am Allison Morgan, the Digital Operations Director for Nantucket Film Festival. I am here with Catherine Gunn from AGGIE. Catherine, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the film?
Yes, I'm so excited that Aggie's playing in the Nantucket Festival. Of course, like many filmmakers who premiered at Sundance or soon after, everything was stopped and we haven't been able to share the film with audiences in quite the way we had intended. And so this is really exciting to figure out a way to engage audiences and to make sure that people still engage with the material that I spent, this time making, and that my team stands by, and that everybody in the film feels is so super relevant right now. It's really a story that is about a woman who sees the world through art and how art can give us an access to places that we don't currently go. And in her case, that was about starting the Art for Justice Fund, which is a $100 million fund that supports artists and activists to end mass incarceration.
Yes, again, I think that the film is incredible for a couple reasons, but particularly in this moment that we're experiencing for Black Lives Matter. And so I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about Art for Justice and maybe where the inspiration for its founding came from and how you guys are moving forward in this moment.
Art for Justice is the fund that my mother started the day after she watched a movie, which for filmmakers is like, you can't think of something better than that. She went to see Ava DuVernay's 13th when it premiered. It was the opening night film at the New York Film Festival. And she went with some friends and she watched the film and it devastated her. It wasn't that it was brand new information, but I think it was sort of that, the tipping point. It was that moment when she couldn't not do anything. She had to do something, and she went home and she sold painting and established the Art for Justice Fund with $100 million and the intention to give it all away within 5 years to artists and advocates and lawyers and other people who are working to end mass incarceration and to reform the criminal injustice system. And we are in our third or fourth year now. We've given over $80 million away. And it's a lot. Our grantee partners are the people who are fighting most visibly right now to change the situation. Prisons are the epicenter of this crisis, of the COVID crisis. They're also evidence of years and years and years of anti-Black violence and police and state-sanctioned violence. And that's why there are so many people in prison and Black people in prison. We have 5% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the world's prison population. We need to change that system in the same way we need to end the police system.
Yeah. I'm just curious if social justice was something you talked about as a family growing up, or if it was something that Aggie came to later in life.
Well, it's interesting because in the film, we don't tell a chronological story in this film. We kind of trace back to what we need to know at every step. And there is one point when she and I were very close during the AIDS crisis. And I came out into the AIDS crisis, and I had been active in the divesting from apartheid and in the anti-nuclear movement since I was in high school. And so I was very comfortable in the streets. I've still been in the streets every day here in New York City. And that was how I responded. She said, at the time I remember she said, I'm going to give money to ACT UP and you can march in the streets and ACT UP. And it was immediately a way to see that we can find different lanes, all of us. And I think that resonates today for people. How can people respond to this given moment from where they are? What can they change? If they're in the position to hire people or be part of the hiring at their company, how can they make sure to look at that? If they're in the position where they're hiring vendors for any particular thing, how can you support Black-owned businesses and Black vendors? Like down to going out on the street every day and making sure that the attention is brought. The military apologized now for having stood with Trump, because our military is not supposed to be a political military. We do live, and nobody acknowledges the dictatorship that we live in, and that is a symbol of dictatorship. Having the military work on the behalf of the of the president. That's never been how our military has acted, even when they have been political. And I think that there was a way that during AIDS that her empathy to her own, you can cut all that out, her, Aggie responded during the AIDS crisis partly because she was so close to so many artists. For her, collecting art was always about knowing the artist, and second, about what the art pieces were. But she says, I collected art so that artists could exist, so that artists could survive. And so she was close to many people, primarily gay men, who were getting sick and dying. And that was a place, and then she came to the Gay Pride March with me. We talk about that in the movie. And it's a really moving part because I think you think, parents are teaching children all the time. And I'm a parent also of 4 kids. And I know that children are teaching parents all the time. And I feel like Aggie's openness to that exchange has really enriched her life and certainly enriched mine and brought us to a place where we can do art for justice together. And, she had feelings, she had experiences, those are outlined in the film. But finally seeing that film, 13th, was bringing back the terror she had for her Black grandchildren who were teenage boys at the time. When Trayvon Martin was killed, you see in the film, he looks like one of my kids. And there's a picture of Aggie with Kofi. And, there is a way, I think, maybe it's enlightened self-interest. I think there are people who have multiracial families who don't respond the way she is responding. But thankfully, I think when we know people, it goes to what Brian Stevenson says about proximity, that knowing people, that's why segregation is such a crime against humanity. It's saying we can't live together. So how can we know each other if we don't live together and work together? And that it's actually, that we saw that with the gay marriage movement, that people saying, oh, my coworker, my aunt, it was getting to know people and realizing, like, once you humanize people, that Officer Chauvin dehumanized George Floyd. He did not see him as human. And that is the fundamental change that has to come about right now, is for people to fight the anti-Black racism and the white supremacy that we've been raised with.
Yeah, I think that's obviously very clear in the film as well, from your point of view and from Aggie's point of view. And I guess I'm curious, I always find it interesting when you start to recognize your parents as people, as more than just your parent. And you have a close relationship with her, but I'm just curious, through the process of making this film, if it either changed your opinion in some way of your mom, if there was anything that you uncovered that was surprising or that you learned that you didn't know before.
Yeah, I thought I was going to learn a whole lot of things that I didn't know before. But the main thing is that not the main thing. A small thing that I learned was that her questions weren't her always evading a topic, but that they were genuinely her interest and her curiosity, and that's what's made her such a powerful speaker, such a good model for what she's doing, because she does actually know what's going on. And so we'd be doing these conversations where she was supposed to speak, answer questions. And she kept just turning around and asking questions and saying, well, Darren, what about you? And then I realized, oh, she's, as I said at Sundance, like, I realized she wasn't just trying to destroy my movie. She was actually trying to make sense of what she feels, because she's very intuitive. And sometimes, she's also a student and she wants to be educated. And sometimes being educated it's like educating the intuition. Like, take your intuition in the right direction because you've got the information you need to make it make sense.
Yeah. And now that you've done a film about your mother, would you ever do a film with family again? Or is this it for you?
Well, I would certainly never do a film with my mother again. I actually did do one film with my daughter called What's on Your Plate. And it was because I knew that nothing mattered. Me telling her, I think it's also for me about education and about having questions and about realizing that how can we communicate with each other in the most effective way, and how can leaderful, like the leaderful movement for Black lives, how can we have a lot of opinions and a lot of leaders and a lot of access to people with knowledge? Like, how can we have more people with knowledge? And the film was because my daughter was about, my oldest child was about to start middle school. And I thought, you know, we've eaten a certain way, we've understood food a certain way. And once she goes away, she's going to be able to eat whatever she wants. And so she needs to come to the realization that she wants to eat a certain way. It can't be because I'm telling her to. And so I just got her and her best friend and started letting them ask questions, you know, and we met with the carrot farmers who provide the carrots for the New York City school lunch. And we met with the borough president. We met with the head of the New York City school lunch program who makes 1 million meals a day. And we tried to see why are, you know, where are farmers markets? And again, it just became a lot of questions. And I did film with her, and I, you know, she also had genetic high cholesterol, so we filmed with her at her doctor. There was a way that the personal, I think, made it accessible to people, even though nobody else is going to be, you know, a biracial New York downtown girl with 2 moms who's got genetic high cholesterol. Like, it actually taught me more about filmmaking, which is the more specific our story is, the more universal it becomes. And if you try to say, oh, here's one child of every race and age and family configuration, whatever, it sort of becomes meaningless and diluted. And so in that sense, it gave me a little confidence to make this film with my mom, but I can't imagine making another one with a family member. I mean, who knows? You know, you tell the stories you know. That's also true for me, is, you know, what's happening in my life. That's why I really enjoyed and appreciated that so many people were willing to talk to her in the film, that all these friends and colleagues sat for these conversations with her, and that it was really an opportunity to say, these are the people who are influencing what's happening in her world, and look at who they are. And people can be more and more intentional about that. Again, as Brian Stevenson says, the proximity is what's going to educate you and help you move in the right direction towards justice.
Yeah, I think it's certainly clear in this film, too, that it's so intimate, but also about something much bigger than you, than me, than all of us. And I encourage our audience to check it out. Catherine, we're out of time, but I just want to remind people to check out AGGIE NFF Now at home, streaming June 23rd through the 30th. Thank you so much for coming to chat with us, and thanks so much for your beautiful film.
Thank you so much, Allison. I hope people go see it. And I think Nantucket's doing a brilliant job of responding to the crisis.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.